Hello there and welcome back. I'm now here in the UK planning my next trip. The main reason I came home was to get my second vaccination, which I received a couple of days ago. So I'm ready to go away again in just a couple of days' time. The country that I'm visiting is going to be the most challenging one that I have visited to date. I will not reveal where I'm going just yet, but I will let you have some guesses in the comments below. I thought in the meantime I would tell one of my travel stories. I have so many from the experiences over the last couple of years that I've had, and I thought I would start sharing some in the in-between moments where I don't have any content to upload. So today I'm going to tell the story of when I got stuck in the Sahara Desert in Algeria. So stay tuned for the story, but before I jump into it, I'm going to introduce you to today's sponsor, which is VPN. Now, VPNs are one of the most useful tools to have while traveling. They allow you to protect your privacy and data when connecting to various Wi-Fi networks, but also accessing libraries on places like Netflix, or in my case recently in Mexico when I was watching England play at the European Championships. I wasn't able to access BBC or ITV, and so to live stream the English commentary I connected to a VPN, which took me to a London-based network, and from there I was able to watch the Euros. So there are many ways in which a VPN can come in handy while traveling. In 2015 to 2016 I lived in China for a year, and having a VPN made my life so much easier. I was able to access Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all the websites that are blocked in China, and there are other countries which also block certain websites which you may not even be aware of until you arrive. So having a VPN really is a fantastic tool. So if you are interested in VPN, then all you have to do is head to the app or Google Store and install it. Once that's done, change to the location of your choice and browse privately. The link is in the description of this video. So on with the video and the story from Algeria. So a couple of years ago now, I visited Africa's largest country, and I started my trip in the capital, Algiers, headed to Oran. I took a flight down to Timimoun, which is much further south in the country. You can see on a map here, it is smack bang in the middle of the Sahara, completely different to the northern part of the country. I filmed the video in the town of Timimoun itself, visiting an Islamic school and seeing all the red mud brick buildings. It really was a fascinating place. But my host, who was a fairly young guy, a couple years younger than me at the time, in his early 20s, and his very good friend, wanted to show me some parts of the Sahara outside of the town. And of course, I was on board to see some of those remote villages and sand dunes. So we headed out in a regular standard car towards the desert, and I started filming my video for the day. And I remember it being so hot. I think it was 43 degrees and it was September. Now, of course, it does get far higher than this. The temperature rises above 50 in this part of the world at various times of the year. But still, for me, 43 degrees was the hottest temperature I'd ever experienced, and it was a challenge in itself trying to film a video in such conditions. And the fact that we were starting at about 10 or 11 a.m, we went right through the peak of the day's heat through the afternoon hours. And I remember feeling particularly dizzy at one point, and that's not to sound dramatic or play up for the means of this video. I think at the time I was suffering from some sort of heat stroke or dehydration because, as I said, I felt dizzy, and I remember after lunch I had to go and use the toilet, and after going there it was pretty loose, It was pretty much just water, and from that I could tell that I was definitely dehydrated, but I didn't tell the guys. I carried on with the day. I wanted to see everything. I felt well enough to sort of push on, and yeah, I didn't make a big deal of it at the time, but I was pretty dehydrated. In the morning we visited an old fort which overlooked an oasis. You could see all the date trees below and also the distant horizon. It was an incredible spot. We had some lunch, some cheese and some sort of like cheap processed meat shoved into one of the classic white Algerian baguettes, and we washed our face in the natural water just beside where we had lunch. It was great. And after lunch was then when I started to feel a bit worse. We carried on to some more remote locations. We were heading for a specific village, and in order to get there, we had to drive through pretty much empty sand dunes. There was nothing around at all. Take a look at this clip. Now this was probably one of the most remote places I'd ever been to. It was literally a road running right through the desert, and at times the sand was blowing over the road. We had to drive off the road and onto thin layers of sand where the small car would be able to drive over because this was not a 4x4, and then arch our way back onto the road. So it was challenging, and I remember hearing almost the anxiety in my host and his friends' voices as they tried their best to navigate the way. I remember thinking that we were not in the safest position. I think being in such an environment without a 4x4 is slightly risky. I mean, the chances of getting stuck in the sand are very high, especially if you're driving off the road and then there's no reception. It's a long way to the other settlements that are nearby. So it was a little bit anxiety inducing, and as I was filming my vlog, I was feeling that a bit. Along the way, we stopped at a few more forts, which were just breathtaking. I mean, they were crumbling with the perfect, unspoilt sand in the distance, with some spectacular views. Some of the best pictures I've ever taken in desert environments were here. From those little stops, we kept heading forward through the desert towards the village, which was our destination for the sunset. Now, I remember because we'd had a lot of water already, we didn't have a great deal left, and then you're driving over this road with just complete nothingness around, just sheer vastness, and knowing that we didn't have a lot of water in reserve was a little bit unsettling, but we carried on nonetheless. We knew we'd be reaching the village. So anyway, we eventually made it there. I even made a comment, which I'm not sure if I put in the original video, about the fact that we managed to make it through that very hairy moment of going off the road and back onto it once arriving in the village for sunset. But I didn't know what was going to come later on, but I probably could have guessed it. After a long journey through a very dodgy road, we've now arrived here in the village of Tala. You can see the car behind me. We're hopefully going to catch the sunset. Lots of kids around, interested to see a foreigner like me. This village is so quiet. The journey here is probably the sketchiest thing, up there with the sketchiest things I've been involved in. Lots of sand on the road. We didn't have enough water. I don't even have my power bank with me in case we broke down or whatever, very bumpy, and a couple of times we had to go off-road into the desert to go onto better bits of land so we wouldn't get stuck, because we haven't got a 4x4, it's just this small car there. Regardless, this oasis was incredible. That sunset was one of the greatest I've ever seen. The sun was so beautiful as it sank below the horizon there, and just go back and watch this vlog. Sometimes just seeing these clips doesn't even really give you enough, but it was something unbelievable. And again, there was children running around as I was watching it set. I had to run in order to catch the sunset because we were a little bit late, and there were crumbling mosques in the oasis as well, but only women and children. We didn't see many men around, but we would get to meet them a bit later on. After the sun had set, I finished my video. I wrapped things up, which is why I never spoke about this experience in the vlog at the time. And we made our way back towards the car, with the two guys stopping to pray along the way in one of the old crumbling mosques, which I thought was pretty cool. After getting back to the car, we needed to reach the road which leads you back to Timimun, except between this village and the road is a lot of sand, and it was already dark. So we needed to find our way through the sand towards the road. We started driving along the sand and we kept going, and I remember only seeing just a couple of feet ahead with the headlights. It was all sand around us. We didn't have a 4x4. This is just a regular car, so your heart is starting to pick up in tempo because you know it's just a matter of time before you run over a bit of sand and then boom, you're stopped. You can't move. And that's exactly what happened after a little while. We carried on driving forward, trying to find the road. I remember the two guys bickering, not knowing which way to go, and sitting there kind of hopelessly, until eventually we met our fate, which was to get stuck in the Sahara Desert. So after getting stuck in the dark, we realized that we didn't have any water left. We had drunk it all. They had forgotten to fill up in the village, and we had nothing, stuck in the Sahara Desert at night. Thankfully it was night, because although you couldn't see, the temperature was at least cooler, and so you were able to get out the car and start shoveling the sand away from the tires without having that heat bearing down on your head. And personally for me, already being quite dehydrated, suffering from some sort of heat stroke earlier on that day, I'm glad that when we did get stuck, it was in the dark and not earlier on in the day when we had to go off the road various times. So for a little while, we tried our best to push the car, two of us, while the other one put his foot on the pedal after shoveling some sand underneath the tires, but the car would not budge. And this just goes to show that if you do venture into the desert, and this is not just in Algeria or in the Sahara, anywhere, it's always advisable to go with a 4x4. Do not try it in a regular car. At this point, things didn't feel great, because even if we managed to get out of this little bit, how on earth are we going to be able to get this car to go across the sand all the way back to the road? So even if we get free, we're going to have to drive forward further and further into the sand in order to find the road. It wasn't looking good, and our best option was to walk back to the village that we were just in to try and get help and also water. So that's exactly what we did. We went back to the village. After some time arriving there, we found a man who came or offered to come and help us. And I'll never forget this guy. He came on his motorbike to the car after we found our way back. He helped us push the car again after trying to shovel and use his various techniques to try and get it out. But this was just one man. And with the three of us, in total 4 of us, we couldn't get it free. So then he went back to the village on his motorbike, and the 3 of us stood around the car kind of a bit helpless at the time, and he also promised to bring back water too. And so a little while later, eventually the response came, and it was one of the most relieving sights I've ever seen. It was this truck full of about 7 or 8 men standing on the back. They're wearing galabeas and they're wearing headscarves and they're talking in the local language. And I mean, I think it's a dialect of an Amazigh language, but I'm not sure which particular language it was. And they were all on the back of the truck. I think even one of them had like a spade, and it was just such a relieving thing to see, as I say. All these men popped out straight away, and I knew at that moment we were going to be fine, no matter what. I mean, even if we couldn't get this car free, one of them would probably invite us to their house and let us stay overnight and offer us dinner and water and all the rest of it. So I kind of felt like we were going to be in a good place. But getting the car to come out, I wasn't sure if it was going to be easy or not. These guys managed to get it free. They knew exactly what to do, and I remember watching on kind of in awe and how much local knowledge goes so far to knowing how to solve any situation. I remember shaking all of their hands and saying shukran. After we were free, the original man who came to help us, he got on his motorbike and said, I will lead you to the road and I will also drive over areas that have only thin sand. And he knew the best way to go. So we had to trust him, and we slowly followed him in the car with our headlights on, going behind him all the way to the road that leads to Timmy Moon. And after reaching the road, I took this one picture of him out of the car window, and it is blurry, it is not clear, but this is a picture I will remember for the rest of my life. This is the guy who came to help us when we were stuck in the desert. He called all his friends and he took us back to the road to be helped in a moment where you really feel like you're in a bad situation and someone comes above the call of duty. That is such a normal thing to happen in Algeria. I think especially in the south of the country, in these remote villages around the Sahara, the people there are friendly like you wouldn't believe. In an instant, you have a truck of guys coming to rescue you if you're in a bad position. And that is something that I will never forget. In fact, my entire trip in Algeria was eventful from one destination to the next. I have more stories that I could tell from the country, so if you do want to see more Algeria stories, or perhaps stories from my other adventures in Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, you name it, any videos I've made on this channel of countries that I visited, let me know which ones you'd like to hear stories from the most. I'm going on my next trip very soon, just a couple of days away. It's going to be quite an intense trip, filming almost every day for about 10 days to 2 weeks. And so I'm not sure if I'll have enough time to get more than 1 or 2 videos out in my first 2 weeks there. So you may have a slight pause on this channel for a couple of weeks before the next series starts. But then I will be uploading regularly and consistently from the country I'm going to visit next. Thank you very much for watching. Again, the link to ClearVPN is in the description below this video, and I'll see you on the next one and on the next adventure. Peace.